to add people to the room and the conversation as we move forward. So first, I wanted to thank everyone for taking the time today to join WeHub St. Louis. WeHub, or the Workplace Evolutionaries, is a community of IFMA that launched in 2011. Locally, Shelley, Lisa, Rebecca, and myself have been working to build the St. Louis Hub. We has hosted dozens of webinars on hot topics, created provocative events at Facility Fusion and World Workplace, while continuing to develop internal research themselves. We are passionate about the changes going on in the workplace, and we want to influence the direction those changes take. With that in mind, today we has gathered experts in fitness and well-being to lead a discussion on the future of workplace wellness. Let me see if I can. Get to the next, there we go. Okay.
Yeah.
Lisa is a fitness design consultant at Advanced Exercise, specializing in the deployment of commercial grade exercise equipment to corporate, education, and civic facilities. Jeff is a program manager and wellness consultant for Exos. For the past 17 years, Jeff has seen the corporate and commercial fitness world evolve and has developed programs to support that evolution. Monica, owner of Pura Vegan Cafe and Breathe at Work, her greatest pleasure is to simplify and demystify meditation and nutrition so that anyone with interest can enjoy the benefits and find some relief from the effects of our fast-paced modern life. We would like this to be an interactive discussion, so please feel free to ask your questions and share your comments in the chat. Shelley will be kicking off our conversation with some insightful questions.
All right. Hello, everyone. Shelley Beckmeyer with Arcturus, Workplace Strategy Director. And I think I'll just kick it off and open it up to some overall questions, and either Lisa or Jeff or Monica can answer these first couple of questions. So don't be shy. Let's just find out what you think. What should companies be doing right now to prepare for the return to the office regarding health and wellness? What do you think is going on, and what are you seeing out there to prepare?
Well, from my perspective, by far the biggest thing that all companies should be doing is communicating with everyone, because as with any part of the business, the communication part is often the hardest part to make sure everybody's on board and understands what's going to be happening as we transition back. But like a lot of companies are doing like hybrid things where some people are going to continue to work from home and then some will come in, or like you can kind of choose which days. But I think at first it's just a matter of making people feel comfortable, having rules in place that you're sure that everyone understands, and giving them access to these wellness-based activities as soon as you can, so they can start to get rid of some of that anxiety through either exercising or meditation or, you know, whatever it might be. But we realize that people coming back, some will be very anxious and stressed, and some will return like, you know, like nothing happened. So I understand that there's different dynamics there is really, really important.
Agreed. And to add on to that, part of communication, I think, to stress is that employers not just communicating outwardly, but listening to the needs of their employees and listening to their concerns, and, you know, finding ways to meet those concerns compassionately, because there's a lot of change going on.
Right, for sure. It's scary, and at the same time, upon returning, they need to know that things are clean, and, you know, some, like you said, communication is at the utmost highest right now, for sure. And Lisa, Maselli, anything else to add before?
No, I mean, both of I would have said the same thing. I could think across the board, so it's hard for me just to add a lot of value to that. I mean, we see a lot within like the fitness space itself, and maybe we'll probably elaborate on this a little bit more, but, you know, just making sure that we have spaces that feel safe. If that means that we have to incorporate more disinfectants or more communication. So you see a lot of the signage that goes up, or, you know, recreating some of these spaces in in useful ways that can help benefit people just to feel more comfortable.
Right, exactly. That's the key. You got to draw them back in. You got to
Mhm.
make them feel safe and clean and draw them back in.
Right.
So in all three of your businesses, is the interest changing? Are you getting more business now since, are your services being adjusted?
Absolutely, mine are. So initially, when the pandemic began, all of my corporate services kind of became non-existent overnight. So, and understandable, there were things to focus on. And now it's shifting because coming out of a pandemic, all of these, whether it's fitness, mental health, wellness, nutrition, all of these can be utilized to be preventative measures to help our immune systems potentially fight off or better handle the case if you are diagnosed or, contract with COVID. So I'm definitely seeing interest, but they're kind of looking for direction, looking for ideas, how can we bring this to people, especially with the blend of people working at home, some are in the office. We've got quite a variety. So they're looking for creative solutions. And I'm very excited about, it's really created a whole new way of offering this and reaching people that businesses weren't open to before, but now we're getting creative, and it's very exciting time to be an employee.
Right, exactly. Lisa and Jeff, are your business models heating up now too?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's when a big version of our company has realized that we were going to move into virtual eventually, but this kind of forced us to do it quicker and adapt with that. And I think that's going to be a bigger growing business within the fitness world and wellness world in general is virtual options and giving people the choice. Like, do you want to go to a physical site or do you want to do some stuff at home? But at the end of the day, I mean, you still need resources. You still need a person to connect to. And we've also realized that leaders play a huge role in people's willingness to take in and take advantage of wellness opportunities at work, or even when they're virtual, feeling like they're able to get out of their desk and go do something for an hour and then come back or whatever the time frame may be. So we're really trying to develop at our site a leadership wellness program. And that's something we've been working really hard on for the last 6 to 7 months to get something where we can start to educate and train leaders on these thoughts and how to help employees get through these difficult times.
Yeah, and for us, because similar to Jeff, everything's kind of gone to that virtual on-demand aspect. I mean, there's definitely some initial clients that we have that offering initially, and then it's just how do we get these same on-demand offerings to these people in their homes? Again, that's a big communication hurdle, I would say, more than anything. And then, for our business, because we, in my specific business, we want you guys to be in the gyms. We want people to go back to the gym. As much as on demand is great, there's still a community aspect to what we do and bringing people into these spaces. So we've seen a lot of shift go to outdoor, whether it just be finding outdoor spaces that make sense within the community, on campuses, and then what kind of equipment can we. And so I'm an equipment person, right? So I do a lot of design, but also just what goes into these spaces. And so, we're seeing a lot of trends to what can we put outside, or where can we keep this stuff safe? So we're seeing a lot of that change, which is also something that we've been pushing for years. So it's kind of, it's nice that we can see some positive in a pandemic, maybe that,
well,
who's going to try and
the catalyst for all this change, it boosted a lot of our work for sure.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic definitely made everyone realize, especially employers, that mental well-being and health is probably the most important thing to be focusing on, not necessarily just having a gym or access to exercising, but how are people managing their time? How are they managing their day? How are they managing the complex situation of your home is now your office, and switch back and forth between those roles, between being a parent, a spouse, an employee, a boss, whatever it might be. It's a challenge for a lot of people.
Yeah, and that brings me to ask, have you heard of any employee well-being successes? How are they measuring that success? Or is it too early?
I think, to measure your success, I mean, obviously asking your employees is one thing, but, watching sick time utilization and turnover right now. And obviously there is a lot of turnover, hiring issues, companies struggling to find talent and applicants. So wanting to be a more attractive employer, and that, being able to tout that you're offering this work-life balance in these programs, but looking at the participation levels, productivity, those are, all ways that businesses are looking to measure the success of these programs.
No, you're right.
Yeah, tracking is a big thing for us. I mean, we also have employee resource groups that we can contract out to, and those have seen increases of utilization too, not just stuff that we do, but across the company, like all the different avenues that people can choose to get resources from have been increased, especially like we were talking about that mental health aspect of things, or even reaching out around time management based things with their bosses, and us giving, like we do webinars a lot too on topics that we didn't do in the past. Like, that's a topic I never touched on before, but like it's become a bigger thing for a lot of. How do they find time to accomplish everything they need to accomplish when they're working a little bit more?
Right. Yeah. No, you need to keep all that in check. So that kind of also made me think about corporate fitness centers. I know we've got some on the call that have them today. They've been closed during the pandemic, but do you think a corporate fitness center is extinct, or are they going to come back and just be different with virtual options? And what's your thoughts there, and what are you seeing happening?
Well, as an industry, I think there's obviously some companies who, choose not to bring them back. But I think you still need to have social places, and you need to have options for people no matter what, because people need to have a choice. Now, whether or not you need a huge giant facility, I mean,
Whoa, Jeff.
But what we're saying is that spaces need to be utilized in a better way.
Right.
If you don't have access to a huge space, you need to maximize a small space with the right stuff that can be used for multiple things. But if you're going to have a business that's still just to bring people in and have the community aspect, the community aspect of gym is really one of the biggest components of having a gym.
Yeah.
You have to still offer these programs. You can't, it's not a good time to take things away from people.
True.
Because that just adds more anxiety and stress about future.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I can agree with Jeff wholeheartedly. I think that, getting people back is going to be up to the employer, obviously, as to like what's comfortable, and employee, obviously. But at the same time, like the gym itself, like I really hope that, I hope that it doesn't go away. But I do think that there are very creative ways that we can kind of reorganize those spaces for people. We're seeing a lot of again, going kind of to that outdoor space, and how can we kind of reconnect to that outdoor space as well, or some spaces where ultimately we're creating like more pod type organization, so that people kind of have that safety measure within their gym space too, where maybe we're separating things a little bit differently, or just reorganizing those spaces so that people just feel comfortable. But as far as them being extinct, that would just really break my heart.
And I think it's also important to note that you still need to have trained staff work in these facilities, because like I saw people ask some questions about legal risks. But if you have staff managing the facility and doing the things that they're paid to do, the risk will way down. We're responsible for cleaning, making sure all the employees are safe while they're in the facility, providing proper instruction for people. So I think, sure, I can see how companies might think there's some legal risk about maybe the risks of COVID. But I think if you have a staff and you have it managed correctly, there's not as much risk as people think.
Yeah, good point.
And
your clients comment on the risk factors, especially Lisa, as you're looking at redesigning spaces? Has that legal risk been something you've been running up against? And
honestly, it's the first I've heard of that quote unquote term being used. I think most everybody's just been really touting on like the safety aspect, you know what I mean? Just making sure. But yeah, there is an obvious like concern probably for some with the legal risk, but I don't know that, like, I haven't heard that from any of our clients, any of our commercial clients to be concerned by that. More so just concerned with like, how do we, thoughtfully reorganize these spaces so that they are safe and that they work for the environment.
And I don't work as much in the fitness realm, but I have seen one local business that I work with has made the decision to maintain a good percentage of their staff working at home. So they're finding they have no intention to move, but they have all this open space in their office now that they're not sure what to do with. And they are getting creative in putting in some things like gyms where they didn't have the space before. Like they have more room to spare than they did for the people that are still coming in.
Yeah, and I think we talked too earlier that do you think that the square footage would stay the same or even get larger? And some of the stuff I've been hearing is, no, let's expand. It may not be in the same location, and maybe it needs to be near windows and open it up with more yoga activities or free space, and, you know, so you do feel that safety. But we're actually seeing some of the metrics where some of the corporate fitness is actually growing. It may not be an enclosed gym anymore, but the square footage is growing. Are you seeing the same or seeing any of that?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I would say just from the element of like having more space to have like more open space, we're definitely seeing that. I think that the element that probably involves maybe Jeff or Monica a little bit more would just be like even the mental aspect and having spaces that people have like rejuvenation spaces that, you know, they're part of like the wellness as a whole. And, you know, so just really like honing in on like the wellness as an overall.
Right.
And so it may not be like, hey, we're going to add a gym. We're going to add, you know, that doesn't mean we're going to make this gym that much bigger, but like how much more space that we can add to add some additional amenities to that gym, I would say.
Right. Yeah.
And I have a question along those lines too, Lisa. How, what do you guys recommend if an employer is going to provide a well-being or meditation room? Because we know there's a lot of importance now on meditation and mindfulness. What are some of the things that you guys can recommend that they include in those spaces?
Well, from our perspective, you know, I think that is probably whether or not they want to have just like an open space with like a chair. I mean, massage chairs are a big thing these days as well. So we've incorporated those in some of those spaces, but just a really like safe, clean environment that they can be comfortable in. Again, I don't know if, you know, I think what we're seeing more so are like these smaller rooms that can be individualized. So like one person can go in, there's obviously like the ambient noise and the right lighting and all of those things that kind of get involved from how that space feels. But from a product perspective, what we're really just seeing is like that comfort, you know, more
like a spa.
We love the massage chair. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to enact people's senses. So like sense of smell, hearing, sight, all those touch, even if you can add texture to things. But like those are things like we're starting to build some wellness just rooms. They're kind of smaller rooms throughout the building on different floors that people can kind of escape if they want for 10, 15 minutes, whatever they feel like they can do. But we're really trying to make it important that like if those spaces are there, they have to work with your psychology. It can't just be a bright room where people go in and relax. Like that's just like their desk. It has to meet these things that enact our nervous system in a more calming manner.
And it needs to be a space where people feel like it is private. You don't want to think that someone's going to come in on you. So you want to have a system where if it's not a locked door, it's occupied. And like Jeff mentioned, nice lighting. I'd say the option for smell, because one smell that I love can really maybe trigger a migraine in another person, but quiet. And just also providing though with some initial training or coaching, should they want it, the option to learn what to do in there. Because a lot of people I think are really interested, but they just don't know what to do. Do I just sit here or do I think really hard? And so giving them some coaching, some help along the way is very important. And maybe even then in the room, some reference guides for them in case they don't remember. Like I had that session, but what do I do? It's been a month or 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
So Brandon mentioned that they're considering UV technology and improving IAQ in these types of spaces. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, if you can build, like, I would love to see more businesses get rid of just the outdoor space being a parking lot. I mean, there's gonna be less people in the building. I would love to see places make a bigger section of outdoor nature-based areas that people can go out there. Because I believe 100% that being outdoors is something that people do not get enough of, and it's vitally important to their well-being and their mental state. So if work can provide that for you in a very calm, pretty, beautiful setting, that is something I would really push towards being able to do.
Yeah, even if it's walking trails or, places to go have a quick meeting outdoors. And Jeff, this goes to your leadership training. If leadership could model that behavior and get outdoors and do more out there, then people will catch on, like, let's open that up. I do have a client right now that has garage doors built into the back of their space that the developer put in, and they're turning one of their garage openings into like a Zen space. They don't want a bunch of workout equipment because a gym's nearby, but they do want, a place to relax and open that door and feel connected to outdoors. And it's not the privacy room, because that's another wellness room to go lay down. And this is just more about getting comfortable and having a relaxation moment, and have the view and the smell of the outdoors.
And I think moving to more terraces, clients are utilizing rooftop space and patio space and creating more of a work environment outdoors. I think people have been so used to now being able to go out and go for a walk during the day when they're working from home that they want to maintain that. They want to be able to get out and be outside during the workday. Bring
their dog to work, if only.
Well, and to your point, Shelley, about the leaders modeling that behavior, I think it's more important than ever, from a change management perspective, to have the leaders modeling that behavior, because now you have new protocol. If you're in, let's say you're in a hybrid return to work, and employees are just getting comfortable with what is acceptable in this new hybrid environment. And if you're not seeing those leaders modeling that behavior, those spaces won't be used if we don't start, reinforcing that's acceptable now, that when you're in the office, it's okay if you're not physically sitting at your desk. Right. You can use these spaces.
Right. And even if wellness spills out into some more common areas or collaboration areas, adding plants, if you're not near a lot of windows, and if you can position to bring some of the nature indoors too, will help. And I've seen that across the board. I mean, we've got some older buildings here in the Midwest, there's just some older stuff that you have to kind of work around. You don't have the opportunities to put the garage doors in and be connected that way. So add your plants, very important.
Yeah, I love Brandon just chimed in that they're considering installing natural prairies around the facility so that tenants can walk a secure lot but still experience that nature aspect.
Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah, you can make it tie into like Missouri's or whatever, Illinois or whoever you're working with, make it tie into their natural environment and make it look like it's meant to be there and not just like put there. It makes a huge difference too from the perception people get from it.
Yep.
Well, I think that wraps up our fitness section. Just one more question on that. And if there's any local group that you can share that an organization or a company that you're working with now, and an example of what they're doing or what is concerning them, maybe if you had any examples.
I mean, I work with Ameren a lot. So at Ameren, we're really working on a wellness leadership program. It hasn't been rolled out yet. We're kind of in the very beginning stages of what that looks like and how do we engage them and what is their motivation for wanting to be engaged in this. A lot of it's just around education about, how wellness really does impact you as an individual, but how your actions and your personal perspective on wellness impacts the people that you work with. So we're working through that. It's going to be a new thing. There's definitely some challenges we're running into, but I'm excited to do that. I think it can be
great. Well, Lisa Glazer, I'm going to turn it over to you to ask. We're going to move into some more mental health, nutrition, and talk about the future of workplace well-being.
Thanks, Shelley. I'm Lisa Glazer, Workplace Dynamics Consulting, and happy to be part of this WE event. Glad everybody could make it today, and hopefully those who couldn't make it can see the recording, because I think there's some great and very important information we're talking about today. I want to kind of refocus or switch the focus over to more on nutrition, and I know, Monica, that's kind of your thing on food and give us some examples of what corporations are doing and what the importance is in nutrition and food these days.
Well, we know that food, in addition to exercise, of course, but food has a powerful effect to prevent chronic illness and disease, or even to, in many cases, reverse or slow the progression of disease. So it's very important. And there's such a wide variety. A lot of workplaces are offering, health fairs are very common, but to offer one-time events, just to introduce people, to get them to taste something they've never tasted, that they've never heard of, or would never put in their shopping cart, order at a store, and to put it in front of them. Say, you get to take a break from your desk and come over here and you get to taste this weird green juice or whatever it is. That's very fun. It almost makes people feel like children for a minute. You get to taste, smell, touch, and there's a community aspect to it too, which is nice when you get the employees together in a group setting. So they're learning, they're being educated, but they're also getting to participate and taste and take recipes. But there are some businesses that take it further, that order, they want to have a weekly rotating healthy juices and snacks. Some people maybe just make sure that there's options. Providing options is really important. You don't want to force food on anyone and say, the only option today is this vegan salad for our meeting. You want to provide options so that people can make their own choices. But there are organizations here locally going as far as I do a 9-week, plant-based course where there's cooking instruction, nutrition education, they taste things. And so some places, and that always comes from leadership in those organizations, that usually means that there is someone in leadership who has implemented this into their lifestyle, and they would like to offer it as an option for their employees as well. So we're seeing a wide gamut, and with going remote, there's also been requests for doing things remotely, but making kits available where folks can either prepare the dish at home, something simple, or just get a sample tasting of it. So when they're watching the seminar on their computer, that they get to taste things as it goes along. So we're seeing people getting very creative and open to a lot of new ways of doing things that, frankly, I had never done before the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And are most companies' cafes, I assume, are still closed? They get around that if there are people that are working in the office that have more grab and go, or how do they do that?
That's a fantastic question, because there are some organizations that had that previously had a cafeteria where they have not brought back those services yet. So in those cases, when they do have a snack machine, they need to make sure that there's healthy options in it. But there's also, there's really simple things you can do instead of, if you have a lot of people in the office, instead of celebrating birthdays 5 days a week, and there's always going to be somebody with a birthday and a reason to have cake, maybe consolidate it to, we're going to celebrate all the June birthdays on this date and have less cake rotating around the office. I do work with some, I have bulk recipes for cafeterias that are still open to help them implement healthy recipes into their rotation. But obviously, the cafeteria situation is there. A lot of them are still on hold, but making sure there's options brought in for catered lunches, or even just providing people with education so that they can make better choices. Even if you're not providing the food, education piece is really the key.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Anything else that employers are doing to help support their employees' physical health and nutrition that either any of the three of you can share with all of us?
Well, I know from our perspective, we do quite a bit of what we call lunch and learns or meeting breaks. So we'll be invited to a meeting and we'll do either whether it be stretching or breathing exercises or some type of meditational type activity.
Mm-hmm.
It really brings some interesting topics that people aren't exposed to enough at work, it seems like. And during these meetings, everyone pretty much not forced to participate, but when the camera's on, you can really see who's opting in and opting out, but there's some amount of pressure that's okay with that. But again, you're giving people options, and I think that's the important thing. Is she mentioned about food, like you may not realize it, but there could be people on your team who are struggling with weight and they've been losing weight, and then you're offering them donuts and then cakes once a week, or maybe they're diabetic. I mean, there's so many things that maybe we don't always take into account, but maybe we should be when we're offering up these different things for people. But I would say we're just getting more opportunities to be in front of people during these meetings, and that's actually been a good thing for us.
Mm-hmm. And so has it increased overall? Like, I know before the pandemic, companies were interested in more healthy options in their cafes and promoting health and wellness, but it seems like it's really kind of gone off the charts now based on what we've all gone through. I mean, are you guys seeing that? Are there examples of, companies where maybe they weren't interested before and now they are, or they're upping their game on that?
I haven't seen an increase in nutrition per se. I'm just seeing more creative ways to offer it. Although I would say, just generally speaking, not even in a business setting, there is more and more interest all the time. I mean, every day, if you read the news, you're going to hear about another celebrity who's decided to eat healthy or doing a new diet. So people's interests are always increasing on it. And I think that businesses are just following that natural progression of increase. But I would like to, obviously it's my goal. I want everyone to think it's the most important thing, because it really kind of is.
All right. Nutrition's a really hard one to focus in on because there's so many different aspects to it. So it definitely makes it a challenge, especially from like a business standpoint. Like if chicken strips and fries are your number one seller and they're making you enough money, like it's hard for them to say, we're not going to serve that anymore. I mean, that's really a company's decision. I mean, I've always been advocating, like, let's get rid of these things, or at least have right next to it an option, and like tell how much fat's in it, and like list the nutrition labels on the items instead of just saying, this week, $3 chicken strips and fries. Of course, people are going to gravitate toward value and what tastes like what they're used to tasting. So like it's a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I guess also the other natural connection is companies that are healthcare companies or health related. I mean, it seems like a natural connection for them to really be promoting this kind of thing, the wellness and the physical activity and the nutrition. But getting more companies interested in that, I think, is the challenge. But I think having leadership engaged is always number one, it seems like.
Yeah.
I don't know, Lisa, anything else, any thoughts from you on any of this?
No, not necessarily. I think the thing that we see, I mean, I feel like the one thing I've seen over the last year and a half is more so just the amount of options that you can get on, like, not when I say on demand, I mean more just at your fingertips, right? So like there's the Fit Flavors have really upped their game on being able to like provide more delivery services for some of these, healthier meal options. And so I think, even just from like a really small business perspective, because that's what I am, we bring in different, like a company called Trifecta or Imperfect Foods. And like, we try and do things like that, which I think smaller and maybe even larger companies can start to incorporate as well. But there's a lot of really great local businesses that people are really stepping up with, having delivery services for their healthy foods and healthier options, which I think has been incredible over the last year and a half. Again, another thing that should have happened years ago, right? But now we're starting. I feel like I'm just seeing it all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely has grown, and is interesting to see what subscription-based, new meal companies are going to be doing, and how that can be even supported out of a corporation, offering up the kits or something like that would be really nice. But I keep going back to the corporate cafeteria and the salad bar. I guess the salad bars won't come back either, right? They're
Not for a while.
not for a while.
But not choose your own, maybe.
Pre-mades.
Sad.
Pre-made kits. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And one more thing I just wanted to touch on is mindfulness, mental health, yoga. What kinds of things, maybe Monica, from your business, have you done with just in general or with corporations to really focus more on what used to be not discussed so much in the mental health aspect of, getting people well in that aspect?
For that, demystifying what meditation is for folks, because it's, again, something else you see in the news headlines all the time, and people, I haven't met anybody who isn't curious about it. If they're not familiar with meditation and already doing it, I've heard about this. How do I do this? And so when people get off work, they're busy. They have other things to do, and it tends to get pushed aside. So it really does affect productivity, stress levels, the amount of time that people miss work. So it's in an employer's best interest to expose their team members to this. And so what we do a lot of is showing people that, no, you don't have to be in a perfect setting in a mountaintop sitting like the yoga girl. Like, no, this is for everyone. You can take 2 minutes. It can be very simple. So just what we're seeing is demystifying it, showing people that there's no wrong way. There's just so many different ways to do this, and letting them know, though, that it's not just for when you're feeling stressed. Like, yes, it's great to have a healthy outlet when you're stressed, but using it more as a preventative tool, because I mean, you've heard of having a set point weight. You tend to have this weight you always gravitate to in your body, no matter how much you exercise or what you eat. And it's the same thing with our stress response. You can actually shift your set point for your stress response. It's like working out a muscle and using it, and showing people that with regular practice, regularity, that they will start to handle the same exact set of circumstances that might have happened to them before they started a meditation practice, and how they would have reacted to it then, and how their body and their mind responds to it after incorporating some mindfulness practices. It can be night and day. It changed me dramatically. So just showing people how to make it part of daily, and it can be at work. It can be 2 minutes. Nobody even has to know you're doing it. You don't have to have a room for it. A room is great, but you can be at your desk. So that's what we're really focusing on in the workplace, is just making it part of your life. How can you make it just
For the routine?
Yes, exactly, and not a special event.
Mm-hmm. And do you use, I know I had a client who has, or who recommends like apps that you can use to do meditation, mindfulness, things like that.
Those can be extremely helpful. Absolutely. Because some of us just take it and run, but some of us like to have a lead, and there's nothing, one is not superior to the other. So providing access to those mindfulness apps is certainly a great benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's funny, like you mentioned there, like the sitting on the mountaintop, and like, so I work with like an 80% male, like blue collar work group. And if I say the word yoga, they're like, if I say the word meditation, they're like, whatever, that's what hippies do. So sometimes it's about understanding your demographic and your marketing. So like we approach it as if like, this is what Navy SEALs do. This is what elite athletes do. This is what, reframing it. It's the same thing we're doing. It's just knowing your audience and what's going to appeal to them, as opposed to, just saying it's this one thing, because it's not, and it doesn't just work for some people. It works for all, but you have to be open to experiencing it.
Yes, and making sure that participants, you don't have to take your shoes off. Making sure it's inclusive to all different bodies and preferences, providing options where you don't have to get on the floor. You don't have to attend at all. It's not mandatory. So just options is important.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lisa, just one thing. Sorry. Just like the whole mindfulness and the meditation is that some people will do it once and they're like, it didn't work. But just like anything else, it takes practice, and it takes commitment, and it takes focus to get better at it. And if you get better at it, like Monica was saying, it can definitely change your life.
Yeah. I was going to just point out the fact that, like, I'm not really sure who's all on this call or who'll be listening to this, but I know just from experience, there's a lot of corporations that we've worked with in the past that already have a lot of resources embedded even in just like their fitness spaces that they can utilize from like a mental health standpoint and push that out to their employees they can take that home with them. So like a lot of people have what's called Wellbeats now. I know Exos has their own programming. So some of it really just boils down to like looking what you guys have, what people have internally already set up, but like what other things that those programs offer to be able to utilize really what you've already set, you already have that stuff. It's just how do we get that out to our employees? And there's a lot of really cool mental health, not, like a lot of different programs, I would say, but a lot of meditation and yoga-esque type things that are within those programs. I think Exos has a lot of them, and Monica, I'm sure you're familiar with that. But just as you talk about kind of these apps, like most of these companies already have them at their disposal.
Mm-hmm.
They can incorporate that.
Wondering, how are you guys engaged with corporations? Are you usually brought in from HR, or what part of the corporation is who you engage with in your various aspects?
That's a good question, because what I have found is there's usually, and so before I was doing this for a living, I was in the corporate office in a local stock brokerage firm. I was at Edward Jones. I was there for a big part of my career, and I was the office health nut. So I would have been that person who took the initiative to, can we do this? Can we bring someone in? And I find that that is usually who ends up bringing me in is someone who is excited, they've changed their lives, and they want to spread it in their workplace. So for me, my experience is majority of the time, it hasn't necessarily been an HR person looking to bring me in.
Interesting.
Yeah, I personally work more like on the facility side of things, and or with like the project management staff or executive team, more depending on the scope of the project. A lot of times with the architect or designer that's involved in kind of recreating the space. So for me, it spans across the organization with like who is kind of heading up the project and who's going to be responsible for kind of figuring out what spaces are going to be best used, within the organization. So kind of all over the place, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Exos usually in facilities is ran as a consultant through the HR group.
Mm-hmm.
But like Lisa said, we do facility design, so that's ran through facilities. And now that I'm in my particular role, I get to like work a lot with like the executive and the officers team to like make bigger initiatives from that leadership perspective. And then like Monica said, what she was demonstrating, there was wellness leadership. Like she was the one who was actively going out there and doing those things. And that's an important thing for companies, to identify those people and leverage them and use them and send them the information that you want to get out, because those people will put it out there free of charge, because it's part of their mentality and the way they live their life. And finding those people isn't always easy, but if you can do it, don't lose that name, because they're super important to your program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think one of the things that people talk about having everyone working separate is people are just hungering for that community and that culture. And so it seems like health and wellness and fitness is a great way to foster that within the company and attract people. And even if they're not working in the office all the time, maybe they're hybrid or maybe they're always remote, gives people a reason to come together and be together. And I've worked with clients who have like contests, they have, different, like you said, lunch and learns, or different cooking sessions or whatever can promote that community feeling. I think it's really important. So you guys are doing a great service. Any other questions that came through the chat? I'm wondering, Rebecca. No, we're asking all the good questions.
No, we've got them all so far, but anybody else have any questions that they want to chime in on? Or any information they'd like to share that they're seeing with their wellness programs or facilities?
Why?
Right. Well, if not, then we can start wrapping things up. If there aren't any remaining questions,
One thing real quick, I just want to wrap up to ask each one of you, what do you see as the future for wellness in the workplace now as people are starting to come back? Kind of the big themes that you're looking forward to.
I mean, I think all industries in general, we're kind of getting into this gamification way of getting people engaged in things. So like wearable technology is going to continue to be a really big thing going forward, in my opinion. There's devices that can measure all kinds of things, but there's even newer ones that can measure your amount of recovery you're getting on a daily basis based on like heart rate variability and different things within our industry that we're aware of. But those things could be really cool going forward, and having a way to get those to employees, not necessarily giving them away. I don't like giving away things, but like making people earn them to an extent could be something that some companies who have a budget to do that could look into those types of options. Incentivizing people for doing good things, not just giving them to them for signing up, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right. Okay. Monica, how about you?
I think the future for quite some time is going to be a blend of the old way we did things and being physically in the office and new virtual or people working from home. So I think the way of the future is finding a way to blend so that everybody's included in the offering. So, you know, it's going to be a combination of on demand, not necessarily just an appointment time like a schedule call, but offering things that are on demand, but also looking to keep that communication or community aspect of it. And like with the food, getting to actually touch and taste things. So getting creative with blending how we offer these programs is going to be key for the future.
Exciting. Lisa, how about you?
Yeah, I think it's just really going to be a matter of like what Monica was saying, kind of blending the two. But I do really see, and I hear from a lot of people that they just can't wait to get back to that community aspect, whether it's just getting back to work. I think we're all, you know, this Zoom call or whatever, Microsoft Teams has been lovely by all means. But I think there's just a desire for people to kind of have that social interaction with each other. And when it comes to wellness and fitness, like there's just so many different ways that we can look at opportunities for, you know, putting together some kind of group training options or just walking groups or where people can stay socially distant from each other, or running clubs again, or, you know, there's so many different ways to do that. And maybe there be a hybrid of, you know, the stuff that you can utilize within the space and then having that on-demand feature as well. But the options are definitely out there. I think that for the most part, you know, I like to think that people want to come together. I know that that's not always the case, but, you know, the more that we can encourage people to feel safe and having those spaces replicate that safety element, then I think we'll continue to encourage people to come back and be together and engage with each other, you know. That's what I got.
Perfect. Well, again, we want to extend our deepest appreciation to Lisa, Jeff, and Monica. We thank you for sharing your honest opinions, suggestions, and participating in this call. Everyone on the call watched in your inboxes and on social media. We'll be posting this recording and sharing the contact information for our experts if you have any other questions for them. And also, please continue to watch us, and we will post about our future meetings and discussions. And, you know, we're closing this out about 10 minutes early, so I encourage everyone on this beautiful day. It's only 10 minutes. Get up off your butts, get outside, take a quick little walk, and then get on with your day. So again, we appreciate everything, and we look forward to chatting again soon.
And just one more thing, if anybody who's on the call has any future interest in certain programming topics for Workplace Evolutionaries, feel free to message our group as well. Like Joanne said, we'll be sending stuff out, but we're always looking for what's on everyone's mind and what we want to be talking about next. So thanks for joining us.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.